Why do you want to do this job? What drives you?
You have 30 seconds.
I also want to thank you for your clarity in articulating the vision you have for the Department of Defense in restoring a warrior ethos, which is in stark contrast to the ethos we've seen the last 4 years, which is of weakness and wokeness. And I want to drill down on a few things specifically and exactly how we've gotten to where we've gotten with recruiting and morale. DEI. So let's talk specifically about some of these DEI programs that have been funded. In our academies, specifically the Air Force Academy, it was advised as disfavored language to refer to your mom and dad as mom and dad. Okay? Dear mom and dad, I'm writing home. Don't say that. That's insane. We're all just people. You can't say that either. This wasn't limited, by the way, to our academies. Our current Secretary of the Air Force, in a memo from August of 2022, thought we had too many white officers, advocated for quotas. And if you crunch the numbers, that meant that 5,800 white officers who've worked really hard should be fired. In 2022, the Army missed their recruiting goal of 60,000 soldiers by over 15,000. In 2023, the Navy missed their recruiting goals by over 7,000. In 2022, the Air Force couldn't meet their standards, their numbers, even though they lowered their standards. Mr. Hegseth, we got to fix this. How are you going to fix it?
First and foremost, up front, you have to tear out DEI and CRT initiatives, root and branch out of institutions.
100%.
And then you have to put in Army, Navy, and Air Force secretaries and others, civilian positions at the helm who are committed to the same priorities that the President of the United States is. Send a clear message that this is not a time for equity. Equity is a very different word than equality. Equality is the bedrock of our military. Men and women, black, white, doesn't matter. We treat you equally based on who you are in the image of God as an individual. And we all get the same bad haircuts. You're not an individual, you're part of a group. Equity prescribes some sort of an outcome based on differing attributes that we have that divide us. What skin color are you? What gender are you? And then infuse that into institutions which manifest in things like quotas, formal or informal, which does what to morale? Sends it in the tubes. And it makes people feel like they're being judged by something other than how good they are at their job, which is poisonous inside institutions.
So on top of this recruiting crisis, that wasn't enough for this administration. During the COVID hysteria and in their attempt to fire 100,000 people who worked for bigger companies because they didn't get the COVID shot. So we got a recruiting crisis. 8,000 well-trained men and women were fired. Will you commit today to recruit these folks back, to give them back pay, and give them an apology from the United States government for how they were disrespected?
Senator, I will commit to this because the Commander-in-Chief has committed to this, that not only will they be reinstated, they will receive an apology, back pay, and rank that they lost because they were forced out due to an experimental vaccine.
And then last, can't serve if you're a leftist. The statements you said about people who have views differently than you, that we're the enemy, are you saying that 50% of the DOD, if they hold liberal views or leftist views or are Democrats, are not welcome in the military? Are you saying that?
Senator, I volunteered to deploy to Afghanistan under Democrat President Barack Obama. I also volunteered to guard the inauguration of Joe Biden, but was denied the opportunity to serve because I was identified as an extremist by my own unit for a Christian tattoo.
You'd mentioned that you were not able to serve with your National Guard unit in the protection of the inauguration of Joe Biden because of a tattoo, a Christian tattoo. Can you elaborate just a little bit on what is this very offensive, extremist, racist tattoo that you have?
It's a tattoo I have right here, Senator. It's called the Jerusalem Cross. It's a historic Christian symbol. In fact, interestingly, Recently, I attended briefly the memorial ceremony of former President Jimmy Carter. On the floor of our national cathedral, on the front page of his program, was the very same Jerusalem cross. And when the events happened preceding the Biden inauguration, I was a part of the mobilization to defend that inauguration as someone who'd been a proud supporter of Donald Trump, but also a member of the military, had orders to come to Washington, D.C. to guard that inauguration. And at the last minute, those orders were revoked. They were revoked, and I was not told why. Later, when I wrote my book, I was able to get information. It was because I had been identified. Someone who'd served in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Guantanamo Bay, holding a riot shield outside the White House. I'd been identified as an extremist, as someone unworthy of guarding the inauguration of an incoming American president. And if that's happening to me, Senator, how many other men and women?
Last year at a hearing before this committee, I called on the Biden Secretary of the Navy to resign because he's failing in his ability to build ships. We are being completely outbuilt in terms of ships by the Chinese, and yet this Secretary of the Navy has been focused on climate change, not building ships in lethality. Mr. Hegseth, if your Secretary of the Navy ends up focusing on climate change more than shipbuilding and lethality, will you commit to me to fire him?
My Secretary of the Navy, should I be confirmed, sir, will not be focused on climate change.
I've seen how the Biden-Harris administration pushed the DoD to prioritize wokeness over being the most lethal military force in the world. Can you talk about some of the changes we can make to improve recruitment and rebuild our military into the most lethal force in the world?
I think the first and most important thing we could have done is elect Donald Trump as the new commander-in-chief. Our warfighters understand what kind of commander-in-chief they're going to get in President Donald Trump. Someone who stands behind them, someone who gives them clear missions, someone who ends wars decisively and ensures new wars are not started. There was a minor incursion under Barack Obama into Crimea, followed by nothing under President Trump, followed by an all-out assault by Vladimir Putin into Ukraine under the Biden administration. That did not happen under Donald Trump. Donald Trump managed the Taliban. Under the Biden administration, Afghanistan collapsed tragically, ending in the lives of 13 at Abbey Gate, who we remember every single day, and no one was held accountable for that. Chinese spy balloons were flying over the country. None of that happened under Donald Trump, and our warfighters understand that. So there's no better recruiter, in my mind, for our military than President Donald Trump. My job is to come alongside him, should I be confirmed, and continue to emphasize his emphasis on warfighting, on getting anything that doesn't contribute to meritocracy out of how decisions are made inside the Pentagon. The only thing that should matter is how capable are you at your job? I served in multi-ethnic units in every place that I served. None of that mattered. But suddenly, we re-inject DEI and critical race theory, dividing troops into different categories, oppressor and oppressed.
Why do you want to do this job? What drives you?
You have 30 seconds.
Because I love my country, Senator, and I've dedicated my life to the warfighters. People see me as someone who hosts a morning show on television. But people that really know me know where my heart's at. It's with the guys in this audience who've had my back, and I've had theirs. We've been in some of the darkest and most difficult places you can ever be in. You come back a different person. And only by the grace of God am I here before you today. I'm doing this job for them.